And so that's where, and here's the other thing. If you do wake up in the middle of the night, if you find that you're laying in bed and you've been awake for what feels like longer than probably 10 to 15 minutes, get out of bed.
Mm-hmm.
One of the worst things you can do is lay in bed and try to force yourself to sleep, because now your brain's going to process. Now you're going to be exhausted. Now you're going to be frustrated, and you're associating the bed with frustration instead of rest and sleep. It's better to get out of bed and do something boring. Empty the dishwasher, fold the laundry, do something until you feel sleepy, and then get back in bed. So you're training your body and your brain. The only thing you get to do in bed is sleep.
Awful.
Go do some work.
Go do some laundry.
I didn't say email.
Empty
I
the
didn't say
dishwasher.
screens.
So that was another question I was going to have is any advice for so many of us that will wake up in the middle of the night to try to, uncheck the brain.
Tools to get back to sleep.
Tools to kind of fall back asleep, because a lot of us, like you said, you think about the next day, think about work, think about the grocery list, the kids, the planning, the weekend, the whatever, and it's hard to turn that off.
So one of the best strategies that I've seen work for people is actually to do before you go to bed. So we've been talking about our brain running and racing and all the things we need to do, and then we get in bed. So we're watching the TV that we're not going to do anymore and all these other things. But what we need to do instead is say, all right, brain, I'm going to give you your few minutes. So about 10 to 15 minutes before bedtime, what I want you to do, and I'm going to give this as homework to all your listeners, I want you to take a notepad and a pen, no technology, and you're going to do this outside of bed. On the right-hand side, you're going to write your to-do list for the next day. I have to go to the bank. I have to go to the dry cleaners. I need to follow up with my advisors, all the important things. You're going to write all that down so that your brain doesn't have to be trying to remember it when you're in bed. If you're trying to remember it, it's going to keep your brain awake. So now it's written down. You don't have to think about it anymore, but it's right there when you get up in the morning. And then on the left-hand side, you're going to do a complete brain dump. So what that means is literally everything that's running through your brain. Now, I usually will tell people to set a timer for about 5 minutes, because the first minute's going to be high level. Worried about my kids, worried about finances, worried about my health. But the more that you're writing, more and more is going to come out of your brain. Now, we're not creating worries. So don't worry about that, because people say, oh, I don't want to worry right before bed. No, it's all in there. We're just getting it out. So the more that you write, you might look at that and say, why was I thinking about that? But you start problem solving through it. So you get it on the notepad, you set it on the nightstand, and you get in bed. And if your brain is still running and racing, you get out of bed.
Or if you forgot one.
If you forgot, right. But that's it, right? So, but you get out of bed.
Get back out of bed.
I gotta
You
get
write
back to
more.
that Tesla option straddle I'm trying to figure out.
He mentioned a stock. He couldn't help
Jeez
himself.
Louise.
I know.
You have to buzz that one out.
But it's all good. So you put it on the nightstand. You get out of bed, you write more, and you get back in bed. So just like you would take a puppy and you keep putting it outside to potty, you're taking your brain, you're putting it outside of bed. You're showing it doesn't get to go in bed. And so what happens is that after a few days, it starts to learn, well, one, okay, I get to be productive here. So I don't have to do that when I'm in bed. And you're no longer taking your troubles to sleep with you or trying to force yourself to sleep. So then you would do the same thing if you wake up in the middle of the night and your brain is running. But the key is that if you're doing it before you go to bed, for a lot of people, what happens is they're exhausted, so they'll fall asleep. But then when they have a few hours of sleep and they feel a little rested, now their brain wakes them up and is like, hey, you forgot about me. But if you're dealing with that before you go to bed, then your brain doesn't have to wake you up to process in the middle of the night. But if you do wake up, there's a lot of people. I mean, we can talk about musicians and scientists and all these people that have all these amazing creative ideas throughout the course of the night. They wake up and think about it, write it all down, and put it on the notepad. And then get back to it in the morning instead of turning on the screens and all of the light and everything else. So that's one of the things to get the brain to shut off. The other piece is, and I will tell you, I've literally seen this work successfully for over 20 years with every individual. If you don't have a notepad and a pen, like I did this with some of my military folks, they would have a phone or a device and they would just verbally speak it. Or sometimes if you're just feeling some of that stress and you can't get to it or you don't want to turn on the lights. But we usually try to do it without any technology, so we're keeping that separate. But it's interesting, too, for other folks, aside from that, if it's not just their brain, but you just can't fall asleep again, is that's where those sleep triggers come in.
And finally, we'd like to thank Amundi Pioneer for sponsoring this podcast and our time with Dr. Milanak.